All right, boys and girls, we are going to jump into a super fun math lesson. I know you guys are very excited. Let's go ahead and get our bodies warmed up a little bit so that our brain is ready to work. So, just to kind of get started and to do a warm up, I want to do a stand up or sit down. So, listen to my questions. And if you agree with the question, then stand up. If you're not sure, you can stay in your seat. Okay? All right. So stand up if you can tell me what a rectangle looks like. Good. We've got most everybody standing. All right, have a seat. Stand up if you can tell me how many sides a rectangle has. Good. Okay, cool. Stand up if you love ice cream. I thought I'd get everybody on that one. Now I know you're paying attention and I've got your attention. Everybody have a seat. Who can tell me what we learned about last week in our geometry unit? What was it that we were talking about? Does anyone remember? Got a couple of hands. Let's see if we can get a few more. It starts with a P. We were talking about rectangles. Yes, it was perimeter. Very good. How many of you guys remember perimeter from last week? Good. So who can tell me what is perimeter? Or how do we find perimeter? Yes. Oh, good. Yes, that's exactly right. And what we have here, if you're not sure, perimeter is the distance around the edge of a shape. And for us, what we talked about was finding the perimeter of a rectangle or a square. Do you guys remember that now? Does that sound a little familiar? So in order to find the distance around the edge of the shape, what did we do with all of the sides? If we have to find the perimeter, what did we do? We added the sides together. Very good. So if we're given, if this is a certain length, we would add these all together to find the total perimeter around the whole outside. I've got a bunch of heads nodding. You remember that from last week now? I know we just had to shake the cobwebs out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this right here so that we can have it there to remember what we talked about last week. So this week, we're going to change things up a little bit. We are still going to be talking about those rectangles, but this time we are going to learn about area. Has anyone ever heard that word before, area? I'm going to write it up here for you so that you can see what the word looks like. Area. Sometimes if you see it rather than hear it, it kind of helps jog your memory. Does anyone remember that from last year? A couple of you, but we're still not totally sure. No problem. So today what we're going to talk about is what is area? What does that mean? And how do we find it? So by the end of today's lesson, you're going to have a little bit of an introduction to what area is, and you're going to learn how to find area of a rectangle. So this will be a new fun, exciting task that we can add on. We already know how to find perimeter. Now it's time for area. So if I had this rectangular piece of construction paper, and you already told me that to find the perimeter, we're going to measure the whole outside and add those numbers together. If you had to take a guess, what would you say area is? It's also with a rectangle. What do you think? We're stumped a little bit on this one, huh? What if I told you it had to do with the inside of the rectangle instead of the outside of the rectangle? Yes, figuring out how much is inside. That's exactly what we're going to do today. So if we're looking at area, we've got this handy dandy little poster. So we have our perimeter poster again. And for area, it is the amount of space inside of a shape. And I just realized I made a right amount. I know you guys would have called me on that. Instead of a mound, amount, okay? Amount of space inside of a shape. And what we're going to learn is how to find the inside of a rectangle, okay? So we're going to put this up here right next to perimeter because they kind of go together, okay? So we have our area. Let me move over a little bit so you can see that too. So we have our perimeter and we have our area. Now, if to find the perimeter, I'm going to add all of the amounts on the outside. Can anyone take a guess on what I would do if I were looking at the area instead? Not gonna add because that would be the same as perimeter. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky. To find the area, you have to find the product of the outside. What does product mean? Does anyone remember that word? What operation am I using if I'm using or finding, excuse me, product? Yes, multiplication, very good. So if I'm looking for the area, I'm going to use an A for area, okay? And then I'm going to multiply the sides. So I'm going to multiply length times, there's my multiplication symbol, width. Okay? So the other way that this is written, you'll see it instead of being written out completely, you'll see length times width. Length times width. So how many things am I multiplying when I'm finding the area? Yeah, I'm only multiplying 2. When I found the perimeter, I had to add all 4, right? Well, when I find the area, I'm only multiplying the length and the width. So if I had these shapes right here, you can tell me something that you guys already know about a rectangle. What do you know about the sides? Yes, the opposite sides are equal. And do you remember how we showed that they were equal? Do you remember these lines? Let me put them on here for you, and it'll refresh your brain a little bit. That would tell us that the opposite sides were equal, right? So if I have this rectangle, and I'm going to, let's say this is 9 inches, and we'll say this side is 2 inches. Let me scribble that out. We're going to flip-flop those. 2 inches, okay? So if I have 9 inches, 9 inches and 2 inches, and I know these are equal and these are equal, I can just multiply these two together to get my area, right? So to get my area, I'm going to write it here on the paper for you so you can see it. I have my length times my width, right? And we already said my two sides were what? 9 inches and 2 inches. Very good. So I would write it just like this. I'll show you in 1 second. Times 2 inches. Okay. So I have to put my labeling in here. My area is length times width, and my area is 9 inches times 2 inches. Well, who can tell me what 9 times 2 is? Very good. Man, I have some smart kiddos in here. Okay. So when we write our answer, we have to make sure our units are in there. That is very, very important. So now my area is 18 inches, and I have to put this little 2 up here, and we're going to talk more about that. That is squared, 18 inches squared, because I have inches and inches. So it's like saying I have 2. So I have 18 inches squared, and you'll always see that with area. Okay? Now, does anyone have any questions right now? We're going to go into this a little bit further. Let me write this right here for you so you guys can see that. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we are going to break into groups. I'm going to have some of you on your Dreambox lessons, and I'm going to have some of you working with me, and then I will also have some of you working independently in your workbook, and we're going to be working on finding the area. So at this point, I would kind of go through a couple more examples of area with my students as a whole. Normally I'd get out their workbooks and we'd all look at some guided practice together. And then once we've gone through a few guided practices together, then we'd split up into groups. And then I'd have a group working with me, and based off of the roster that was given to me, probably what I would do is I would have Jaden, Matthew, Blaze, Kylie, and Adeline working with me, since they were some of the students that either had an IEP or they needed a little extra help reaching standards. Sarah and Alicia were in the proficient group, but they also had some IEPs for math computation. So there are a couple of kiddos that I would probably check in with more frequently, but still give them a chance to work independently. My enrichment kids would do the workbook page and then probably work on some Dreambox lessons, which is an online platform of it can be enrichment or remediation. And then I also use another online platform called 99 Math that I really like. It's kind of like a Kahoot, but only with math. So it could go through concepts like this, or it can also go through some basic math computation. And with some of my more struggling students, what I would do is actually go through multiplication facts, because obviously if they don't know their multiplication facts, they're going to have a really hard time finding area. So that might be something I work with in my remediation group as well. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.